Dragon Age Inquisition was released way back in 2014, which makes it almost 10 years ago to this day. Damn, it's been a while. Since then, fans had to wait quite a while for the continuation of the story, which left off at the end of Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, after all the waiting, the next installment of the Dragon Age series is here. What was initially announced as Dragon Age Dreadwolf is now titled Dragon Age The Veilguard, after a series of misses with recently released games. Anthem! This title seems like Bioware's last chance at redemption for fans of the studio to start believing in them again. So join us here at GameMate as we review the newest entry into the Dragon Age series, and see whether this game shines as Bioware's redemption game. Without spoiling too much of the story, Bioware continues to wow audiences with stellar world building and a compelling narrative built upon a long-standing foundation of prior games, novels, and other material. Dragon Age The Veilguard puts you in the shoes of a new character named Rook, as they help Varric, OG Varric, find the whereabouts of the Dreadwolf, Solus. The story picks up from where Inquisition left off, as the team continues to follow any leads to the location of Solus and stop whatever he's planning on doing. Similar to the past games, it always ends up with having to put together a team. It's no different this time in Veilguard, where Rook is tasked with leading a band of various characters, each with their specialties, to stop the recently unbound gods from destroying Thedas. The group dynamics and the conversations that they have always add a lot to the experience of playing the Dragon Age series, which is one of the reasons why the recurring characters are so beloved. Dragon Age as a series thrives on making players experience the consequences of their actions when they choose from the many different choices featured throughout the game, and Veilguard did a great job with continuing that tradition. However, our one gripe with the story and how it was presented is that there may be some questionable dialogue at times, where it either takes itself a little too seriously or is too comedic, which may leave you scratching your head. That's not to mention some moments that feel like they happen a bit way too fast, or don't give out context for some of the events. This game also needs you to have quite extensive knowledge of the previous games, as they throw out a lot of exposition dumps and terms that new players to the series would be very confused about. Nevertheless, the game carries on its legacy of having your choices matter for the most part, and executes it well. It's so great that Bioware still excels at giving players a lot of thought-provoking choices, which they were known for in their previous games. The gameplay of the Dragon Age series has been evolving with every new release. The series started to delve into a more action-focused game back with Dragon Age Inquisition. Now with The Veilguard, it is finally embracing the faster pace of the action RPG genre, which makes the gameplay more fluid and more engaging as opposed to the older games. In contrast to the previous title's very strategy-based gameplay, Veilguard focuses instead on unleashing combos and knowing when to go on the defensive. The game's combat has a heavy emphasis on dodge and parrying. Yes, they added parrying to Dragon Age, which allows you to quickly counter enemy attacks in a fluid motion. These skills are no longer limited to the warrior class now, as classes like the rogue and the mage all benefit from these new mechanics, as it allows them to increase their rolls and movesets in battle. Speaking of classes, they've also made a big effort to make every class fun to play and wildly unique from each other. Classes are no longer locked to a singular choice of weapons, and instead can use all weapons that are assigned to the class. This means classes like the rogue can use both the bow and the twin swords without having to change up their skill tree. Finally! But that's not the only improvement on some of the classes, as even the mage got a huge update with how they are played. Aside from the staff, mages can now have access to a new weapon called the Orb and Dagger, which focuses on the more melee side of magic. This makes mages a lot more enjoyable to play, since it gives you more control over how you want to play and grants you more options when choosing a class. And all this is made easier with the streamlined progression system. Compared to the past progression systems of the older games, Veilguard made its progression simpler and easier to digest and understand. The skill tree is very easy to get and is neatly divided into easy to understand sections so players know at a glance what they're focusing on. This simple change, paired with you being able to refund skill points at any time, opens up ways to try out the other builds without having to spend resources respeccing your stats. Another change is in the way the exploration is done. Instead of large semi-open world areas like in Inquisition, Veilguard incorporates smaller and more engaging areas to explore, which makes exploring the locale a lot more enjoyable. It feels like there are more varied locations in this game, as the smaller exploration areas allow the devs to feature more variety in the world of the game. Given this, we do have quite a few qualms about the game, especially with some aspects of combat. Compared to its predecessors, where your party composition matters when fighting, Veilguard also streamlines how party members and their abilities work. The game has a more individualistic approach in gameplay, that party members feel like an afterthought and are only there as assisting characters that you command to do certain abilities with. While they can be useful in battle, most fights can be beaten by just getting the basics of the game's mechanics down, and there were times when we felt like our companions didn't feel like they contributed much to the fight. Another complaint we have is that the enemy tracking can get pretty annoying at times, especially during certain encounters that feature enemy ranged units constantly harassing you, forcing you to play more defensively. Everything about the game's visuals is extremely well done, where the lighting, post-processing, and art direction come together to make a beautiful, appealing game. It's no surprise that the visuals of Veilguard transcend the previous game by a mile. The lighting in particular seems to be one of the biggest focal points during gameplay. When seeing everything in motion in cutscenes and combat, I can't help but marvel at how gorgeous everything looks. It's one of the better looking games of 2024, that's for sure. And mainly because of how Bioware enhanced their overall aesthetic with the great use of lighting. This also applies to the game's animations and effects, where everything in motion looks amazing. Just looking at the clothes and the hair physics alone was enough to see that they put a lot of detail and thought with how these were animated. But it does have its issues, specifically with the character faces, as the face themselves and the facial animations applied look a bit off. The only problem we have with the visuals is how Disney-fied everything is. Not only that, but the player characters in the game seem off, and I just can't put my finger on what it is exactly. That doesn't seem right with the whole theme. Maybe it's the mix of weird facial animations and overall structure that seems out of place at times. There are also quite a few times when certain characters and enemy designs didn't really fit the game's theme, which makes them look out of place or not as threatening as they were depicted before. As for the sound design, the game's audio design has always been commendable, where the sound effects and music have been great enough to enhance the experience. Similarly, the game's voice acting is also pretty noteworthy, where most of the characters deliver their lines well. And just the way the party banters as you explore also shows how well each of the characters are voice acted, as they feel like a bunch of friends talking to each other as they explore the world of Thedas.
There are all the jobs I did in Minrathis. The last thing I expected was a Tevinter mage to be involved in breaking me out.
Well, good. I hate for assassins to find me predictable.
And also try to, well, stop the Dreadwolf from doing his thing. In conclusion, we here at GameMate are giving Dragon Age The Veilguard a 90 out of 100. While the previous installment tried to balance its old identity of being both a strategy RPG and an action RPG, Dragon Age The Veilguard was the result of Bioware learning from their lesson on fully investing in the action in an action RPG. With great audio-visual presentation, fluid gameplay, compelling narrative, and so much side content to explore and finish, Dragon Age has made a comeback worthy of your time. So what do you think of Dragon Age The Veilguard? Was the long wait worth it? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming related videos. This has been GameMate, and we'll see you in the next one.